All right, Saagar, what's on your radar?
Well, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's gamble to try and rig the rules of the Senate impeachment trial finally failed yesterday after she had a solemn and historic ceremony in which she transmitted the articles of impeachment to the upper chamber. I'm just kidding. Instead, she put on one of the most faux serious and ridiculous displays that we've seen yet throughout this entire process. It really just shows how much of a mockery this all really is. To kick things off, Pelosi made the ceremony in which she signed the articles of impeachment, one which she seemed like she actually had accomplished something of real legislative merit. She had dozens of pens that she used to sign and hand them out like party favors to the excited people in the room. She even took photos after the ceremony. The entire thing was so gauche, even CNN cheerleaders thought that it was terrible. Take a listen.
We are used to seeing signing ceremonies, handing out pens at moments of celebration, when a president is signing legislation, when even sometimes, in a rare occasion, but it has happened, when the House sends over a landmark piece of legislation. It was unusual to see that kind of ceremony and making, handing out the pens and smiling for a picture in this kind of situation where the House Speaker has bent over backwards to say publicly and privately, this is somber, this is not a time for a celebration.
And after that, the appointed and vaunted impeachment managers, they walked the articles of impeachment over to the upper chamber. It literally looked like that Game of Thrones scene when Cersei is made to walk through the city. Just take a listen. I would have superimposed the shame soundtrack, but I was told that for copyright reasons, I'm not allowed to. But the fact that even CNN can see through this nonsense demonstrates how vacuous our political elite is. They love the pomp and the circumstance and the phrase right side of history, because the truth is that they do not have any actual political objection to the status quo. Nancy Pelosi seems eminently comfortable pursuing this gambit, despite the fact that it will dramatically hurt two of the leading contenders for president in the Democratic Party. Now, don't get me wrong, Republicans love this too. It's a perfect foil for an impeachment-obsessed mainstream media. Frankly, all it's really doing is galvanizing a Trump base that rightfully sees it as an attempt to invalidate the 2016 presidential election. I mean, rightfully so, given that 6 out of the 7 impeachment managers Pelosi appointed for the process were for impeachment before the whistleblower complaint was even filed. Now look, all this does is give Democrats and Republicans the opportunity to squabble over Ukrainian military aid rather than how our economy is structured. Is President Trump's new China deal enough to safeguard American workers? How is the manufacturing index doing in Midwestern states? And if we're going to talk about corruption, should we maybe mention and tackle all the other money that we see in politics? Perhaps we could focus all of our time, money, and energy on an active campaign to litigate all of these things. Our elites have once again done us a disservice, in which their core disagreements have nothing to do with the daily lives of the people who sent them here to advocate for their actual interests. Nothing could show that better than the unseriousness with which Pelosi has treated this process that has a preordained conclusion. And ultimately, Crystal, we have an active campaign. She's actively hurting that campaign. And part of the beauty of a campaign is it raises and it makes candidates, account for interesting things. You see Bernie Sanders finally bringing up the issue of trade, USMCA, versus President Trump. Literally, Donald Trump signed a trade deal yesterday with China, $250 billion worth of tariffs. There's a whole lot of stuff in there that needs to be litigated. Was it good enough? Did he do what he actually is going to say? Is it going to bring manufacturing jobs to the Midwest? We've covered here on the show about how economic concentration has made it so that blue states under the Trump economy have actually gotten better than red states. Isn't that something that you would love to see litigated and hammered out? But instead, they focus on this, and they're like little process, they're like process worshipers who are like handing out pens, their silent march because they want to be in the right,
and their photo op.
They want a B-roll of history. They all these people want to do is be in a stupid frontline documentary that nobody will watch. And it's like it's so ridiculous in order to watch it all play out when we know how it's going to end and we know the cost. The cost of their obsession and the cost of what they have decided to do.
Here's the thing. as I've said many times before, but I always want to make clear, I don't think what the president did in Ukraine is okay. I think the texts and the new information we're getting from Lev Parnas is important. I think it's significant. I think it's something that we should know about, and that is very, very troubling. However, the hollow, shallow nature of the resistance of Democratic leaders is completely revealed by the fact that was it the day, literally the day after they passed the articles of impeachment, they help the president to sign into law this, massive trade deal, right? I mean, that tells you everything you need to know. Katie Halper always talks about how Nancy Pelosi's resistance is embodied by her standing ovation that was done in an arch way. I mean, I think it's the perfect metaphor, especially at a time, look, this president probably illegally assassinated Soleimani, putting us on war footing. Like, that is so much more significant. It just puts into stark relief the type of weighty issues that we could be discussing instead of this. Now, on the strategic part, also a complete disaster. I mean, I actually thought, okay, if you're going to play the game of like, we're going to draw a hard line in the sand, and if you don't play ball over there in the Senate, we're not transmitting. I thought that was the way to go. Give them a deadline, say, here's what we want. If we don't get it, we're not doing it. We don't want a sham trial. But no, of course, they can't follow through with that. So instead, they linger, they wait around. She ultimately looks foolish because they really don't get anything that they ultimately wanted. And now it bleeds right into the Iowa caucuses, takes two of the top contenders off the trail, which I know she doesn't mind or care about, but is a disaster for the American people. So there you have it.
What this has been reminding me a lot is Benghazi, which is that the Republicans spent millions of dollars and all this energy focusing on Benghazi, the 13-hour hearing with Hillary Clinton, when we bombed Libya and decapitated a regime, and the Obama administration never asked Congress whether any of that was okay. It's like the sheer hollowness of the thing that they decide to focus on, which is like try to lob just political bombs at Hillary Clinton, when the actual structural problem is that, we were bombing Libya and taking out the regime. That's exactly how this reads to me. You focus on this like small, and again, was it a legitimate area of inquiry? Yeah, a U.S. ambassador died. Yeah. Was it actually? I mean, does anybody really believe that that's why the investigation was happening? Obviously, no. It was done for stupid political reasons, and it massively backfired against them. That's exactly how I look at this entire thing.
And you're bringing up Libya is very relevant because, I mean, we had a really interesting exchange in the debate that started to unfold about the authorization for the use of military force. Because Joe Biden comes out and says, oh, this was totally inappropriate for the president to use it vis-a-vis Iran, but it was totally fine when we used it in other ways. That's the reason why they don't actually want to constrain this president in that area. The reason they don't actually want to litigate when it is appropriate and not to seek authorization through Congress is because they're all complicit. They don't want to have that debate. And they don't want to have the debate about the bigger structural issues because they're all complicit in all of that. So instead, they pick off this one little pro-national security state, pro sort of protecting their own elite guy, Joe Biden issue. Again, not to say it's not important or a legitimate line of inquiry, like you said, but that is what you're going to have wall-to-wall media coverage, spend all of your political capital on, all of your mental capital on, that's the thing is such a disservice.
Yeah, it really is. All right, I'm looking forward to your radar next, Crystal.